Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, now it's on.
Okay, thank you, Professor Pu, for your introduction, and thank you, the Nanjing University, for organizing this wonderful international symposium. My name is Junjun. I'm now working in Southeast University, and before that is study and worked at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So today my topic is about the soil bioengineering using vegetation. The specific topic is the plant growth and planting pattern on soil hydraulic changes. I use a landfill cover in a field study, for example. So the vegetation actually widely distributed in different geotechnical infrastructures. For example, in the soil erosion in the embankment, this bioengineered slopes, and also landfill in the mining sites, and also in the coastal wave attenuation, even in the desert protection, desert and the sandstorm attenuation, and the crack, the problem. Just now, the professor can also present this topic. So the key actually for this is the interaction between atmosphere, plants, and soil. So the plants, the atmosphere, we know that there are normally 5 parameters, and for the plants, just like human beings, it's very smart. And for the soil, it's geotechnical engineers care most is about the physical and the hydrological and mechanical properties. So I just use this more clear picture to show that in Australia, one slope uses different vegetation types. So we can see that some vegetation can protect the slope very well, but this local vertebra, for example, cannot resist the soil erosion. So normally, what's the mechanism behind? For engineers, maybe not that clear. And also in the Southeast Asia, for example, in South China, they use the vertebra for the protection of the river banks, for example, and also the slope stabilization. You can see the vertebra, for example, they have a very long roots. They normally can use this mechanical reinforcement, okay, to increase the shear strength of the soil. And also they also in Australia, for example, they also can use this kind of vegetation as the hydroponic treatment of the municipal sewage influence. Okay, so this is about this multidisciplinary research. Now this is a simple illustration of these atmosphere plant interactions. Normally, as I say, most of study care about the mechanical, just like this long tap root that can function as a soil nail. But recently, we focus more about found the more contribution. Also very important is the hydrological contribution. We know that plants can absorb the water, right? Not only within a root zone, but also below the root zone, sometimes can be 5 times a root depth. So engineers can use this hydrological effects by plants. Okay, so no matter in the slopes or these other geotechnical earthen structures, one question we want to ask is because plants are a living material, so it will grow. So how the growth and also the planting pattern affect the soil hydrology, okay, about the surface and the subsurface water flows. Now this is the unsaturated soil mechanics basic theory. We know that when we increase the suction, the shear strength will increase, and also on the other hand, the increase of the soil suction will decrease the permeability, right? So if the plants can increase the soil suction, so it normally can increase the shear strength and decrease the permeability. So this is actually most engineers want to see, okay, in the field. So use this so-called natural engineer to stabilize our earthen structures. So based on this background, so we carry out some small scale and large scale tests. For the small scale test, this actually is work done that time when I was a PhD. That time we have the plant room in the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. That time, the this is atmospheric control room. We can control all the 5 atmospheric parameters, such as solar radiation, temperature, etc. Right? Then we use the big columns to see this, to investigate this atmosphere, these plants, and also soil. These 3 aspects, the interactions, to see how these atmospheric parameters, soil characteristics, and soil plant characteristics, and soil hydrology, soil shear strength, their interactions. So this is, you can see this leaf area index normally increase with the time, of course, and also increase with the white spacing. This actually as expected, as just like the agricultural crops. And for the roots, if we have different plant density, then normally the root depth increase with the spacing, and root area index. This is a parameter we characterize this root property. So normally decreased with the spacing in the shallow depths, but in the deep depths, it becomes the opposite. So all those plant behavior will, of course, will affect this soil hydrology. And for the induced soil suction, we know this plant can absorb the water, right? It can induce soil suction, also called the negative forward pressure. For example, for this is dense case, this is a black one is a bare. So you can see that in terms of magnitude, this induced suction can be up to 6 times difference. So you can see the significance of the induced soil suction. And this is during the drying, during the waiting. For example, we apply the 100-year return period rainfall that time. We can see that this is a solid line, all represents before rainfall, okay? And also the dashed line represents the suction distribution after rainfall. You can see that now for the dense case or the medium spacing case, the return suction, okay, is much higher than bare case, much higher than bare case. And after that, we do some back analysis. We, especially for this dense planting case, there we find some plant decay induced micropores. So we propose use the dual permeability model at that time to capture those suction response. If we use a conventional single permeability model, this suction response cannot be captured. Then we go to this field monitoring in the landfill site. Actually located in the Shenzhen Luohu district. Actually, this yesterday my PhD supervisor, Professor Charles Ng, also present this slide, but his focus is on the recycled concrete. My focus is actually on the surface vegetation part. This is a close look. We select 4 plots, each plot with 6 meter times 6 meter, then 3 spacing, and also 1 is a grass only case. Normally in the landfill cover, we can only plant some shrubs with shallow roots or the grass species. We cannot plant the trees. We all know that, right? So in order to interpret these interactions, also developed this interaction model, okay, atmosphere vegetation soil interaction model based on the energy balance and the water balance. So this is the 3 parts, and considering the different species, when they absorb the water, they have the interactions between them. Now, this is a specific framework of this model. The key is the energy partition, so how to partition the solar radiation based on this leaf characteristics and also the plant sink term. Here, we also consider the soil temperature effects on the sink term, because we all know that the plant canopy will affect the soil temperature, but on the contrary, the soil temperature will also affect this soil water uptake. Just like in the summer or in the winter, this water uptake behavior of the plants are significantly different. Then the soil hydraulic properties, for example, water retention and the permeability functions, we need to also consider the plant roots effects. And finally, based on this self-programming coding, I just can calculate this pore pressure of this different vegetative condition. This is a field measurement of this climate data. I will not just skip this because this parameter can very important when you do the back analysis about this soil hydraulic. Now, before interpret the results, I just introduce one important observation about this root decay. Okay, not only in this this is forest wildfire.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. But also in the densely planted case, okay, this normally if the decay, root decay, it will induce some substantial changes about the root reinforcement and soil properties. Okay, and so in order to model this root decay, root plant growth and root decay effects on the soil water retention model, propose one simple model to provide incorporating root volume ratio and root decay ratio, and based on the unsaturated soil three-phase diagram, considering this plant root parts, then finally can get this equation and validate by the field the data. Okay, field on the group different growth condition and also different plant spacings can have a very well prediction. So for the different planting case, for example, the mixed planting case, we can also get those parameters. Okay, water retention and also this water permeability function. Those two parameters are actually very important for the transient seepage analysis in any earthen structures. So another important parameter is the Ks. Okay, Ks is, we know that the saturated permeability here is also a function of the growth time and also the plant spacing. After the densely planted, okay, but for example, 3.5 meter, okay, decrease a little bit, then increase substantially. Okay, so this difference also very important observation. And also we can correlate the saturated permeability with this root length density. Okay, have obtained this by linear correlations. These bilinear correlations can, when you do this long-term simulation of these kinds of atmosphere plant soil interactions, this also can be input as the input parameter. Now, in terms of the gas emission, the vegetation growth also has a significant effects on the gas emission. For example, up to years, this grass, the cover gas emission can be up to 1 order of magnitude higher than the bare soil. Okay, this about the growth effect. And this is a suction response. Suction response is in the second half, we can find that this closer space in blue color always have a high suction, but at the second half, the white spacing always, the green color always have a higher suction retain. Okay, so you can see that the growth and the spacing effects significantly. And this is the suction distribution along the depth. I just skip this. So here I just want to highlight the change, root-induced change in the saturated permeability on suction response. We need to consider. Okay, for example, this dashed purple line here, without considering Ks change. If you do not consider the Ks change, you can the prediction can induce a very large discrepancy between the simulated and measured results. So this is about the temperature effect. Similarly, if you do not consider temperature effects on the soil, on the root water uptake, it will also cause a large discrepancy between the measured and computed results. So finally, just here, this last slide about the results, about the spacing effects, we can see that for the landfill, we care most about this population. So we find that the intermediate spacing 0.8 meter, okay, can induce the lowest population. Okay, that demonstrate the significance of the spacing and growth on this behavior of the landfill cover. And we also carry out some mechanical reinforcement on the slope stability of the plant roots. Also consider spacing effects using the COMSOL and CW. This is the result. We can see that the mechanical hydrological effects on and horizontal axis is plant spacing can also have the effects on the factor safety. So if you're interested, I just all put those references in at the bottom of each slide. You can look at those papers. Now this is finally the conclusions about just want to highlight this significance of the plant growth and also the planting pattern on the soil hydraulic changes. When we carry out the transient seepage analysis, we must consider those effects. So this is acknowledgement about this when I carry out some research. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you all.